Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to talk about specifically social roles in Dungeons & Dragons and how WebDM recently got this, specifically charisma roles, charisma skill roles, and how WebDM got this shockingly wrong, and he got it so wrong that it really exposes something dramatic about the Dungeons & Dragons community. So let's talk about it. So one, WebDM, I'm paying a lot of attention to them right now because they just broke in half. So WebDM had 2 D&D commentators. They have 190,000 subs. I can tell you right now, you can count on 2 hands. I don't even think the list reaches 10 for the number of YouTube D&D YouTubers, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition commentators who have over 100,000 subs, and they're close to 200. Well, when I say they, that's no longer the case. So Pruitt, who was one of the 2 D&D 5th edition commentators on WebDM, recently left. Pretty shocking. He left specifically stating that he needed to preserve his mental health and protect himself from burnout. Shocking. It was major, right? But Jim Davis was like, bye! And he just went right on without him, which, again, shocking, but, these things happen. It's a big thing. It's hard to do D&D 5th edition commentary, I'll tell you that right now. Sometimes it breaks people. Yeah. Hashtag Todd Kenrick, hashtag Pruitt, right? It's a thing. All right. So, Jim Davis did a very, very good video. He really talked about doing charisma skills in depth and did an excellent job of just talking through the problem with with charisma rolls in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? And I disagreed with I disagree with everything he said. But it's still a great video. And I think that's one thing I love about YouTube. I listen to a bunch of people I don't agree with, and but I value what they're putting out. And Jim Davis, this is a great video. He's completely wrong on everything he's saying, but and shockingly wrong. Let's get there. All right. So here's the thing. He's like, hey, you can't So he talks about a player character giving a speech and then saying, okay, so I want to persuade this person and I want to convert them, so this villain's henchman, right? I'm just giving an example. He talked about multiple items, but in the video, but an example would be your player character's I'm going to talk to the villain's the villain's henchman and convert them to join me as a follower, right? And he said, in the way and then the DM would be like, give me your speech, right? And then the player character's like, I'm not going to give a speech. I'm just going to make the roll, right? And the DM's like, hey, give me the speech, right? And so the player tries, right? And then the DM's like, oh, that's not a great speech. You fail. Or they're like, oh, that's not a great speech. Disadvantage. Or they do give a great speech and it's advantage, right? There's so many, and what he really was talking about, which is a really brilliant thing to talk about, it's a really good idea, is this doesn't happen on the combat side, right? If you're I take my sword and I chop that goblin in half, right? The DM's not well, get up and show me how you swing your sword. And then if you do a good job of it, in the living room, they're advantage, right? And if you do a really bad job of air chopping down a goblin, they're this, disadvantage or advantage, we just don't do this on the combat side, right? And what's crazy is he actually said most players are denied the ability to make these huge changes in the game, to literally convert a villain's henchman, right, with just a social role, right? Literally change the team they're on, right? What really blew me, so one, he did a great job. Jim Davis did a great job of calling this out and showing how different this is and how weird it is in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But what really blew my mind was the more you think about Dungeons & Dragons, especially if you think about Dungeons and Dragons as much as I think about Dungeons and Dragons, your mind begins to spin in three pillars: exploration, interaction, and combat, right? And what you realize is what Jim didn't even recognize in his own self is that he has no problem with a player character ending he has no problem with a player character ending another non-player character's life with a roll, right? But to significantly change or transform the beliefs or ideas or even the opinion of a non-player character with a role is unthinkable. And he literally said in the video, that's not how it works, right? And I think, and I feel bad for him because, like, he's just the first person, and this happens all the time. This happens to me too. People like come in and they just say terrible, terrible things like in the comments, and the reason why is I'm talking publicly, right? So so people, so Jim Davis is taking the hit just because he's doing his video and saying what I think the vast majority of D&D players believe. They are totally comfortable. They are expecting a player character to routinely take the lives of other non-player characters. But the idea that a player character would convince someone with just a roll is outrageous, right? And I think that's so crazy. Like, it's wrong that we think of the game like this. We should be, and honestly, the more I think about it, bards, right? And the other thing is, I really think we really might want to start thinking about making backgrounds classes, right? Because right now there's no class for Princess Leia, right? A diplomat or a noble. That's just some flavor that's just a hue or a color you just kind of color onto the class, right? But the reality is a noble, right, who has the ability to literally convert henchmen, right, from villain to hero side, which which Princess Leia could do, that's even more dangerous, because that's like a big swing. You're not just losing one of your men or your one of your henchmen or henchwomen. You're actually that henchman or henchwoman is going to the other side, like with zombies, right? When they bite, it's not just the loss of a human, but there's a gain on the zombie side. It's a big swing, right? And so I think it was just shocking that Jim Davis didn't realize he's totally comfortable with a player character ending another non-player character's life with a single roll. But the idea that a player character could convince a henchman to come across lines with a single roll is just, or literally solve an entire, resolve the entire, denouement of a campaign with a non-combat roll, and they just literally talk the problem through, is unthinkable, right? And it's not Jim's fault. He's just at the bleeding edge, right? Lots of players agree with it, but I think it's shocking, and it's dramatically wrong, right? Like, it's dramatically wrong. So I really think we really need to think about this and put this stuff into, and realize social characters should be every bit as dangerous as combat characters, right? Interaction characters should be every bit as dangerous as combat characters. And maybe we even find a space in which exploration characters are every bit as dangerous as combat characters. And, oh man, I'm just going to say this in one sentence. It'll probably be an entire video later. I think we might have the entire characters wrong, because I think every character is built around being a combat character, but we need combat characters, interaction characters, and exploration characters. Right? Oh, that's my opinion. What does this bring up in your head? What do you think about when you think about this? Really fascinating. Thank you, Jim Davis, for an awesome video. Sorry you're on the bleeding edge and getting called out for being wrong. You are wrong. But that's okay. I'm wrong occasionally too. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Do I have Jim Davis wrong? Is he better than I think he is? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.